Today is a very exciting day for Year of the Mecha. It is the day in which we enter the golden age of Armored Core. Coolguy is joining me for this ride.
Yup, it is the golden age of one of the golden series of Mecha. So yeah, this one's gonna be friggin' fantastic.
Oh yeah, so fantastic that this is one of those games out of all the, I've got ways to play all these various games on their original hardware, sometimes emulation, but with my noted, fanaticism for this series, of course I have physical copies of these games because I bought them years before they got jacked up in price.
Yeah, I used to, I ended up having to get rid of mine when my final PS2 broke. But I played the absolute hell out of this one back when it was new.
Yeah, so, I was lucky to still stick with the exact same PS2 that I had from early 2004 to I think it was last year, early last year, that the power supply had just died on it.
I had a lot of problems with the control boards. Those would basically just get some schmutz or whatever in them, and you would more or less have to try to friggin' resolder some bull crap to get it to work. But considering that I have always lived with dogs, and usually my dogs are shepherd style dogs with big coats. It's not really too surprising that their presence is hard on my game consoles.
Yeah, Gagglegoon came in with the follow. Much appreciated. Are you winning, bud? I certainly feel like a champ today. We're playing one of the best Armored Core games.
I will admit, a lot of the time that I was playing Armored Core 3, I was drunk because this is around the time I was just making it to college. This was the year I discovered beer. So, I will probably not have the fine detailed recall that I do on a lot of the other games that I say I've played, because I was very inebriated a lot of the time I was playing this game.
Yeah, at least when it comes to systems, because of how the Armored Core games have always been. I demonstrated this when going through the PS1 titles, where there were 3 of them before they ever got to Armored Core 2, before they actually advanced one whole numeric number. Is I was familiar when I was talking with you about getting you on board for this feature, that you were familiar with Silent Line, and that was one of the games that you wanted to be on for when we get around to it. And at least with Armored Core 3 being the direct predecessor, Silent Line's the standalone expansion follow-up to it that is still very rooted in the exact same core gameplay, parts, mechanics, everything that this establishes. So I think even with your inebriated adventures with this game, it's not going to feel too alien, at least as far as when you see it in motion.
Right.
That's what this opening video is demonstrating. No, you cannot destroy enemy limbs. That wasn't going to be a thing until Last Raven, and only that game.
It was it always felt like something that From wanted to do a lot more than they were able to, simply because the entirety what we're showing right here, the entirety of the reason they call it Armored Core, because the pilot seat is actually in the chest. Where they would be most safe, which seems like a really obvious design fiat that very few mecha games go with.
Definitely, yeah. Because even when it came to Last Raven, when they introduced limb damage, there wasn't a way to just break a core and still have it continue. It's because that was basically where the bulk of your armor points were. If the core sustained 100% damage, that basically meant you were dead.
Yep, you're gone. So Mech Warrior getting blown up on your center torso, it'd be like that.
Definitely, but at least with that opening did demonstrate were things like the Exceed orbits, which were little floating kind of like weapon pods that eject out of the core and can shoot autonomously, can eject weapons. Doesn't seem like too much, but because this has to get into one thing I must remind people as far as how I put together the list for this stream series and why Armored Core 2 and Another Age were not on here. As much as it would have been very easy to fill out the entire 52 game list with like all 14 games. Like the core reason, to summarize again for people that aren't familiar, I'm not as hot on Armored Core 2 compared to the generation immediately preceding and even succeeding it, because I felt that while it added a lot of, you know, new mechanics and types of parts to equip your AC with stuff, some which were optional, some which were actually a necessity, I felt it was the sort of thing where adding it, it was kind of sloppily added on top of the framework that they had established so well with the first game. And on top of that, it was hampered by performance issues where just any or all explosions were enough to make the game fall below its 60 frames per second target. And because this is the olden days of Japanese game development, or even like video game development in general, that also meant if it dipped below 60, that meant the game was going to slow down. Speed was tied to the frame rate. You can imagine how it contributed to a rather sluggish feeling. And so us going straight to Armored Core 3 is why I'm also going to do the heavy lifting of describing more what those things were that were added to Armored Core 2. Because this game, like, the start of this generation is basically making up for the sins of the previous one and actually justifying Armored Core 2's like newest editions and having them actually work within the core framework of Armored Core.
This particular generation is also the one that, you know, people are expecting the most out of for the new Armored Core game that From is definite has confirmed that they're working on, simply because this was the generation where things snapped together the best.
Ruled the world. It was simply called the controller. The controller handled the major decisions of everyone's life. People took it for granted that the controller would handle every aspect of their lives for them. Under the rule of the controller, people lived safe yet uninspired lives of a promised prosperity. As time went on, several powerful factors known as corporations came on the scene. In their separate struggles to gain absolute power, the corporations waged war upon each other. The controller even manipulated the corporation's war. All was going according to the plans of the controller, but somehow the forces of chaos began to rise.
A story setup that is not too dissimilar to what the first Armored Core game established itself as.
Right.
We are in an underground society, there is corporate warfare going on, and there's the big difference is that whereas it was a reveal at the end of the first game that an AI was basically in the background of society controlling everything, we're just upfront that we are in a society that is openly administered by this AI.
Your objective is to eliminate all forces occupying the city. The targets are
We're also thrown into a very familiar scenario as well, where upon starting new game, like in the first Armored Core, and the second for that matter, Armored Core 2, you enter your pilot name, and you only get to continue through the game if you pass an initiation test, which is trial by fire. The fire in this case is, hey, you gotta remember that Armored Core does not play like a normal like dual analog shooter.
No.
I'll do my best.
So this is gonna be kind of the hardest it gets for me, because I've made it clear that I operate with custom key bindings, essentially. The stuff that is more comfortable to me.
Right. Cool. I knew that there. I couldn't remember if it was this game or another one. That the evaluation mission itself was just like an absolute bear, and like they did it that way intentionally because precisely because the evaluator mentions that becoming basically a Raven pilot for the corporations is like there's not a whole lot of turnover on those positions, and they have to be sure that their pilots are worth it because cores are still extremely frickin' expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's no use in giving this test to Raven if they can't prove to themselves that they aren't just going to die right away.
Yep.
But doing this,
all right, so,
as simple as it is, it proves, as like our operator just told us, we have now entered the ranks of an elite few into the global cortex.
The nest for ravens.
Mm-hmm. A familiar garage menu, like
Yep.
Go there to customize our AC, check out the arena, go on missions, and of course, like mail.
A controller saying, "Hey, I saw you do that."
Mm-hmm. An alternate name for the controller that you could derive from, which I believe is it's more explicit in the Japanese version. It comes from the logo. The other name that you could refer to the controller by is Dove. Because there's obviously low resolution. It's hard to tell just from the sort of emblem, but that's what the word is. The sort of AI designation for the controller of Laird is it takes a bird's name, which ties into an important detail once we get to Silent Line a few weeks from now.
So there's a lot of initial chuckling over why exactly is this global AI playing around with and functionally condoning the corporation wars when it is named Dove and clearly has a large has a big thing to keep the world as peaceful as possible, and that is absolutely something that From loved playing with.
Yeah, the constant balance of just of a human nature in certain ways, because it has a very dark and cynical outlook on just humanity in general, the sort of things that it is often gravitated towards, which in a lot of cases is violence against one another.
Very much of The Defenders by Philip K. Dick, which was wait, was that Dick? Yes, that was Dick. Which was basically a slightly alternate history sort of thing, where humanity was driven down below ground after a bunch of nuclear strikes or whatever as part of the Cold War.
Yeah,
and the shooting war continued through use of autonomous drones on the surface, and the drones would basically come back constantly and say, all right, this is the situation. We need more fast attack vehicles or whatever else, and the humans that were underground started suspecting something ain't right. The war has been too static for too long. And at one point, they finally just broke past the drones at a look on the surface, and it's not a bombed out wasteland at all. The land recovered pretty quickly, and it turns out what the drones had been doing is they had just been cultivating the land and rebuilding cities and basically making it ready for humans to just come back up top. And everybody was super pissed, just why didn't you tell us? And the robot simply replied, "Look, we analyzed your history, and humanity tends to get a lot more civil after a sufficiently traumatic societal event. So we needed to keep you underground until we were sure that the trauma was bad enough that you wouldn't do this bullshit again.
Yeah, which, oh man, once we get through, once we get through like the other games, like in this particular generation, like that sort of like that synopsis you just described, like is definitely just like the need to regulate humans, because like even once you put them back on the road to recovery, they are invariably going to fuck things up again.
Yeah, the context that the Defenders was written under, of course, was, you know, under the Cold War and in the shadow of World War One or World War Two, with World War One only like, you know, a generation behind. It was just like clearly we need to do better if we don't want, you know, World War IV to be fought with sticks and rocks, as Einstein put it.
Yeah. So over here in the garage, so I've been kind of demonstrating, you know, we got compared to the PS1 games, since, you know, better system, more memory, we can hold up to 3 like AC configurations that we can like swap to as we need per the mission. I kind of basically got it set up where this is the default, the ARC 6, because I got into the habit of the naming scheme of just basically as each main title goes on, that I just add a new number to the end of the arc, you know? So
sure.
That's the regular. This right here is the ARC 6, the Op-I version, which refers to this little thing right here, Op Intensify. I made mention of this playing the first-gen Armored Core games, but first and second gen had this in-universe concept that translated to a gameplay feature called Human Plus, which was in those games, particularly for Armored Core 1 and 2, the standalone expansions didn't really allow you to activate it on a fresh save. Is that if you got into enough debt that like it would become difficult for you to get out of, you would then offer your body up to basically be experimented on and receive cybernetic enhancements, which factored into increasing like the performance of your AC in a variety of different ways. Some of them giving you like abilities that like just normal ACs would not be capable of doing, like a biped AC just being able to use heavy back-mounted cannons without needing to kneel in place or things like that, or just having an automatic built-in radar no matter the type of head parts equipped, things like that. So this is just kind of the one where I decide, you know, I want to be cheeky about it. And then the third one is the HC, Heavy Custom. It is basically my not messing around, fuck you, I am just going to DPS like whatever the problem is until it dies.
As I say when I'm playing Final Fantasy XIV, mechanics are what you have to do when you are not doing enough damage.
Yep. A lot of the familiar parts as well from the first generation, but also, you know, we got like the head parts. They do the same purpose of providing like radar functions or defense. You know, you kind of have to trade off one or the other depending. The core, which, you know, always has to be there no matter what. But we got 2 types, EO and OB. OB is Overboost, which was one of the newfangled features that was introduced as part of Armored Core 2. It essentially creates like a hypercharge like booster that, you know, has a bit of a charge up for a second, but once it is ready to go, you just go shooting off in whatever direction you're moving. Drains your boost pretty quickly, also adds quite a bit of heat, which will be explained later, but EO refers to Exceed Orbit. It releases autonomous floating weapon pods that hover above you and will shoot at whatever is in range. Arms, self-explanatory, you know, different weight classes. You could also have, you know, arms that are literally weapons, you know, more firepower but less defense. Legs, still the same leg types, but with the addition of hover types, which were again another introduction in AC2. Like, if you wanted something that was like kind of like in the similar vein to tank treads but hover based, you know, you could have that, but obviously it's kind of, I always saw it as sort of like an interesting in-between of the sort of heavy, slow, defense-oriented focus of tank treads versus the strong horizontal movement of quad legs. Boosters, self-explanatory. FCS as well. Generator, that's how we power it. But another thing that's still been kept from Armored Core 2, another edition, is Radiator. Because I mentioned heat. Heat management is a thing in Armored Core as of the PS2 games. And really only the PS2 games, for that matter.
It would heat management was an interesting idea and concept that they put into it, but Armored Core never really quite seemed to be the game where that was an interesting addition, right? You normally do that sort of thing in games where there's a more ebb and flow to the combat, and that doesn't tend to happen in Armored Core games. Like, you have a couple of different approaches, but those approaches tend to not want to take cover as much as possible. Like, you're either shelling somebody from a very long range, you're dumping as much armament as you can from medium range, or you're getting up in somebody's face. Cover has never really been a thing, and waiting for an opportunity has never really been a thing. So heat management always fit in a little awkwardly. Fortunately, not very obnoxious, though.
Yeah, it's definitely been off and on, because I mentioned how it's like a lot of the new additions that came into Armored Core 2 were just not handled as well. They felt off in comparison to the old framework it was being bolted on, because like heat buildup was very strong in Armored Core 2. It was the sort of thing where I remember at the time that, like, because of how much this had an impact on all the other sort of parts in the general pace of Armored Core, like the overboost concept, it added a lot of heat whenever it activated, so it actually, at the time, dissuaded me from ever wanting to use it, because it's like, if this puts me in a situation where my AC is going to come close to or actively overheat and start taking, like, tick damage, I'm just not going to use that, which is why I was grateful when they added the Exceed Orbit version of cores, rather than just having be explicitly overboost, because then that gave me another mechanic that was like, where like there wasn't any like obvious sort of downside to using it. But at least by the time of AC3, is like they brought like the heat buildup more in line, like more in check, until they switched up the way heat buildup and management worked in Nexus, that it kind of caused a new problem, a similar but new problem all over again, and which then got eventually fixed by Last Raven. So you could see they had this problem of some new features that they want to add, they end up being overtuned.
Mm-hmm.
By the time 3 and Silent Line rolled around, like the original version of the heat system, I would say perfectly fine. Like I would, take the time to make sure that, okay, is my generator and radiator combo, the right one for the job? And oftentimes, it would. And if I were to go with overboost for a particular situation, it would actually do what it's supposed to, which is give me the quick repositioning tool I need, and not give me the overwhelming disadvantage of, well, I'm overheating, time to take damage. We got inside weapons and extensions. Inside, funny enough, another Armored Core 2 edition, but how it was initially implemented in that game is that they were stored within compartments on the core itself. Now they're actually added to the arms. And the idea behind them is that they're very auxiliary type of weapons that are meant to kind of complement your main traditional arm or back mounted weapons. So things where it's dropping things like contact bombs, floating mines, decoys for throwing off missiles, which could be very useful if you're in a situation where you're not particularly good at handling dodging around missiles and things like that. Of course, because of them being added to the arms now, it's you got this other thing to worry about your arms being overweight. And extensions, they get equipped to the outside of the arms. They're like especially tertiary, but they're useful to use at in certain times. You know, like you can have like a radar jamming function, shields that get added to like the side for extra defense. I personally prefer like this one, which is an emergency energy recovery device, considering that I have the Karasawa, one of the most powerful energy rifles. You know, you want to make sure that you're not running out of your boost meter, or else you're going to go through a lengthy recharge.
Those sorts of auxiliary things are what we were talking about a little bit before the stream, wherein some like one of the primary criticisms of this generation was that there is so much customization, and From is generally very eager to use that customization, but that it's very difficult to get a 100% mission completion rating in this game, simply because they are clearly expecting you to have a lot of to have like very specific builds or something like that for certain levels, and frequently there's no way to know what's going to be useful until you go in and get your teeth kicked in once or twice.
Definitely. And then of course, you know, back weapons and arm weapons, self-explanatory. It's always been the same. One thing to note though with the left arm weapons, I should note, is that back in first gen it was always exclusively laser blades, but starting in AC2 they actually had this thing where they added shields to the mix. You know, so you basically had the kind of the decision you had to make is like, okay, do I want like a close range melee option, or am I not good at doing that and I need more defense, so I'll use a shield to kind of give some extra protection from frontal attacks. They expand that further so that they have like additional weapons that, I will admit, I think this is though, as far as new additions and like making good on old additions that were not nearly as well done, I think the non-shield and non-blade left arm weapons leave something to be desired, and that's something that the series would not correct. They wouldn't make the left arm weapons feel quite as useful yet until Nexus, because all you have are just kind of weird stuff that you don't normally see as equipable in the right hand, like these howitzers, or like a special flamethrower. Like, mostly, that's kind of what it extends to. Howitzers and a flamethrower. Yeah, by Nexus and onward, they actually start expanding what you can equip in your left arm. So that's like, you know, if you wanted to actually go in with, like, dual machine guns, like Guns Akimbo, that sort of thing, you could do that. But that's the gist of kind of, like, what the assembly is like now. A lot more parts, a lot more things to keep in mind. But, again, it's like, this game is where they finally realize they actually need to make you kind of consider those more now, rather than just putting them off to the side as being like, well, this is an interesting new thing, but it doesn't mix. We also got cockpit customization if you want, and yes, I am one of those weirdos where it's like, just for the sake of the simulation, I'm like, give me all the readouts. You can have it be as simple as this, or you could just have as many things as you want, like telling you what, you know, like these first four are usually what shows up if you're fighting in the arena, but then you have stuff like info that tells you how many enemies are left in the map, the outside temperature, the speedometer, and an altimeter.
All of this stuff is legitimately useful in certain situations. You know, like there's no truly useless UI thing, but like if you turn truly everything on, you definitely will not be faulted for saying, boy, I see more of my HUD than of the enemy.
Yeah. And
there's a bit of information overload here.
Yeah, well, but I love it, and that's not even getting to the fact that Silent Line introduced an actual for real cockpit mode.
Right.
That thing was nuts. You know, mentioned before, we got the arena, which was introduced in Project Phantasma and became a series staple pretty much ever since. Like, this is my completed file, so naturally I have beaten every single one of these. But there's also an additional one that only gets added after you beat the story for the first time, called Extra Arena. We made mention of this back when we had you on for Custom Robo and kind of talked about how like that series like eventually got to a point where it was able to support more than 1v1 at a time, and how Virtual On going from 1v1 to 2v2 ended up being a mistake for that series. AC decided, yeah, we could get in on the 2v2 action and it still works,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like we could challenge them if we want, and as well as bring in select Ravens from like the other arena ranks to have as our battle partner, which is very nice. One thing to note about arena progression, however, you see like because the rank isn't just entirely numerical. You see the letters preceding it. That is because when you first start the game, you are Raven rank E, and therefore you're only allowed to challenge other Ravens in the arena that are of the same letter rank. So you cannot go straight to, like if you're good enough at this game, you cannot brute force your way through through beating every single arena opponent and just being like flush with cash as a result. You actually have to balance, going to the arena if you need some extra money to afford that one part you may need, but you still have to get back to the main focus, which is the missions, and proceeding through the story so that you can raise your letter rank.
All right, we haven't killed something in like 5 minutes. I'm ready to shoot something.
All right, let me see if I can. Yeah, I believe this is the one. Yeah, so the Raven test, that was actually the one that we did once we booted up the game. So let's see what we got over here for some of the other missions in the beginning area. Note that yes, you do get mission ranks, S being the highest.
Right.
It is manageable enough over time to get 100% mission completion according to the system file. Mission ranks themselves do not contribute to that, and for good reason, because I am never going to be able to get S ranks on every single one of these.
A lot of the S rank requirements are straight out. What the hell were you smoking that day? Like, I played this game very drunk. Like, clearly the designers were also hitting the bottle when they were designing a lot of this shit.
Yeah, it is stupidly strict in a lot of cases. You can kind of get the sense that it's based on how much time you need to take, how little damage you need to sustain, and you're like limiting your expenses as much as possible. But time is still like a big factor, and it's like it's real tight.
In order to accommodate the need for more housing, every day we are delayed is costing huge sums of money.
Of course.
Yeah, this is
like hey, we need to put people in houses. That's noble enough, right? Yeah, sure it is. Yeah, by the way, the main reason we want to do it is because this is super expensive to not. Ah, there it is.
Yep. We can even bring in some consorts, some like special MTs to assist us if we want. However, we only get like we're only allowed like a designated amount of funds, so we can't bring in say 2 Huntresses at once, because that would be double our consort budget.
Okay.
But this is literally like the first mission that you get access to, one of the first after completing the Ravens test, which I've made I made the observation over time, like between like the starting missions of like Armored Core 1 and 2, and like most of these games really is like a starting mission where you have to deal with like workers on strike or having a standoff or some manner, like resolving a corporate issue through violence and death that is so trivial. Is like, it is the Armored Core equivalent of the starting quest in an RPG where someone tells you to go into the cellar of a building and kill rats.
Kill a bunch of rats, yeah.
Yeah, so going in with the Kurosawa, it's pretty
there
easy.
You go.
I even got the got my hands on the on a special laser blade that is designed to shoot energy waves, so that's handy. But here's the Exceed orbit in action.
Holy mother!
It does drain pretty quickly, though.
I mean, when you're crapping out something that leaves everything in front of you just a pile of molten scrap, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah. Just so simple, like, to do. But again, just thinking even a moment about this world, like, the whole setting that we are partaking in, yeah, that's real fucked up.
It's still a game from FromSoft. Like, end of the day, it's still a FromSoft game. Anytime you think something is okay, normal, and straightforward, it's not.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, this is just kind of demonstrating some of the mail messages that we get over time. You know, like Global Cortex will like reward you, like congratulate you, like when you achieve a new rank, or if you meet the requirements to unlock a new part that gets added to the shop. Obviously, you know, the corporations will also contact you, and you still feel scummy even having to talk with them because you know about their ulterior motives. Yeah, if a few factory jobs had to be sacrificed for the greater good, then so be it. Oh, man.
Greater good, they say.
I remember your rants on the on the Dawn of War Let's Play about how if an organization or group or anything has to justify what they do by literally calling it the greater good, it is not good.
Yeah, like
fucking Tau.
Yeah, to be clear to the chat, what we were talking about with the Tau, who are basically the kind of like pseudo Far Eastern sort of race, and for a while they were talking about you know how like a lot of people were mad about how they were the quote unquote good guys in Warhammer 40K, which is really not supposed to have any good guys. And they and you know, in a subsequent codex, it became obvious they are nothing of the sort. Their leadership routinely practices stuff like mind control to ensure that their empire stays coherent. And what I pointed out was that their unifying like religious ethos is referred to as the greater good, and like they don't really comment on precisely what that means. It's literally two words, like big G greater, big G good, that you're doing everything for.
Yeah.
And and a bunch of people stayed mad and were just like, oh well, they dirtied up the Tau because we complained. I'm just like, no, you complete lunatics! Like you at the end of the day, these are humans writing for humans, and you don't freaking call your you know, unifying ethos the greater good without being real sure that what you're doing is pretty distasteful. That is how human writers write for humans. Just relax, guys.
System malfunction is to blame. Nothing like this has ever happened before. In any case, we've lost contact with the research team sent to investigate. We need to know what is happening as soon as possible. Find out what's going on and report back. You have permission to eliminate any who attempt to interfere.
This mission is being offered by Kisaragi, which is a third corporation. This is something that AC2 actually started, the idea where, you know, the corporate war, as it were, isn't just strictly between two giant conglomerates. There's usually like a third that is, you know, like literally like a distant third behind the two main competitors, but is still hanging around and like trying to like find like its opportunity to kind of advance forward. Like, like this is ultimately a war between Crest and Mirage, which are, I always look at them as the successors to Chrome and Murakumo, which were the main organizations of the first game. You know, Crest kind of sharing the same corporate, like, fatalist pragmatism, whatever you would call it, that Chrome had, whereas Mirage is much in the same way as Murakumo, where they absolutely hate their rival, and they're trying to, like, do anything they can to make them come off like they're the good guys, even though they get involved in just as much dirt. Like the moral high ground over something that is just so not in the people's interest.
Right. I don't remember if the meters that we saw briefly on the mission select screen actually affect that much, but like there a lot of the Armored Core games do try to keep track of like who's currently dominant in the corporation wars, but like I don't think that changes too much. Like it's just a thing that is there for you as the player to see some kind of effect from what is from your missions.
Yeah.
Rather than just be like, okay, cool, you get a pat on the head and told to hit the showers, and then you're just gonna go out and start shooting more stuff, and that's kind of it. There's no strategic effect of your actions.
Yeah, the most you get of like your actions kind of like causing the powers to shift, as it were, like in order to favor one or the other, is, no joke, the first game, because there's like a branching point in the missions where, like what you do, it gives one side the advantage that they start gaining momentum to win the war, but it naturally does not matter in the grand scheme of that game, because it's like even after they win, they still like fall away and decay, because the main antagonist is the AI that's been manipulating everything.
Right. It's a little bit like if anybody played Shadow of War, like the entire point of the Shadow Wars at the end of that game is that stalemate is victory, and that's very much what the controller Dove is all about. Simply because if any one corporation actually were to win the corporate wars, it would be a disaster for the controller, because then there would be enough central intelligence, or like humanity would be united enough that it could oppose the controller at that point.
Yeah, but as it turns out, like with this particular game, we obviously know what the setup is. We've established as much as like the controller's purpose, and the fact that, as fucked up as it is ultimately sanctioning this corporate war, just to kind of keep things as part of its balance. Except things don't seem to be going like quite as smoothly for the controller as like everyone is trying to let on, because what we were doing just now was like investigating like a weird like swell within like the water sewage system. Various functions of Layered, as you go through the game, you're being told through like these emails, they're starting to fail one by one. Like water supplies are starting to become impure, and like the air supply in like certain sectors are becoming less and less breathable. Like I think there's even like a small sector that basically ends up just being destroyed and ultimately condemned without much warning to the people living there to begin with. And this causes essentially like the context behind Crest and Mirage's conflict with each other starts to change. They're still ultimately against each other. They hate each other's guts, but the focus is less on them just coming out on top for the sake of it, and more trying to uphold what they believe is right for Layered and the controller.
Yep.
So let's see. Yeah, like Closure Section 302, they ordered it to be sealed off, advised that it's off limits. It was deemed necessary in order to counter recent increase in terrorist activity, because the only people that actually seem to realize that, the actual third option, which is the controller is fucking breaking apart and we need to do something about it, is a domestic terrorist group known as Union. And Crest, meanwhile, is choosing to side with the controller, even though it is absolutely starting to, decay. It's falling apart.
Status quo, though. Like you stick with the controller, you stick with the status quo. You give yourself some time to hopefully try to figure out something to do about it.
Yeah, whereas Mirage is more like, like, their whole beef with Crest is because they then view this as Crest trying to position themselves as, you know, they're the ones chosen by the controller to help maintain order, whereas they're just being petulant about it, being like, no, fuck you, Crest. We know what's right. We know that something's wrong with the controller. That's why we need to take over it and fix it so that we can impose our rule. Which is like, I can't help, especially these days with how, and just to get briefly political about real world events, just kind of the insanity that is, like, and frustration of, like, the current two-party system, where it really does feel like where, like, one side is actively trying to just work itself way around, like, the what the current law is supposed to be to better serve itself, whereas the other side, you know, is opposed to that, but they're not really putting forth any sort of solutions to fix any actual, like, what the actual problems are that are starting to cause the status quo to erode and fall apart on itself. So no matter what they're doing, like, it's not helping the people. The people are still suffering with, like, a collapse of society.
Yep. In the context of Armored Core, that is an almost literal collapse of society as well. Since like they're talking about the layers and the layered and so forth, and that is quite literal. The world is set up a little bit like an ecumenopolis, where every city is set up in multiple layers to basically maintain as many humans as possible in a reasonably comfortable setup. I forget exactly what the rough population of humanity is supposed to be, but if I remember correctly, it's supposed it's either AC2 or one of its contemporaries that pegs it at something like 15 billion.
Yeah, that makes sense for AC2, especially considering that game's whole plot was that by that point in that timeline, because AC3 is a completely different, like, storyline and universe, you know, it's not continuing off of that, but by AC2, humans have moved back to the surface and kind of rediscovered that before everyone had to move underground because of war and destruction, that people were trying to make plans to, like, expand humanity out as far as Mars. And that's why the game is set on Mars, and it becomes, like, essentially a sci-fi mecha Wild West frontier. Right. It's interesting kind of how it looks at that, because that's basically because on Earth by that point, the regular government, as it were, actually manages to start, you know, enforcing its authority more, rather than just leaving it all up to corporations. So the only place that corporations can get that sense of power again is to literally go to another planet.
Tim Curry, only the opposite.
Yeah. And here's even the thing, as I was trying to find these particular messages, that even Crest, the ones trying to, like, keep the controller functioning as they can, fully aware that it has been malfunctioning and falling apart. However, they just cannot do anything about it, because they're the most insane thing they decide to go with is like, well, if it's going crazy that it decides to kill humanity, then I guess we'll do it.
I mean, Crest's entire thing is that they at least ostensibly understand that the controller is the controller has the power to do and just absolutely staggering amount of damage.
Yeah,
probably enough that in the aftermath, society is as you've come to recognize it wouldn't survive anyway. That's their rationale. Whether or not they're correct about that is an entirely different question.
Yeah, they've always had because the thing that comes with Crest is, like, compared to their competitor, they are much less about trying to word their stuff in such a way that it's, like, appealing to, like, some, like, false sense of morality or high ground. They're always, like, the most matter of fact between the two, which again was similar to Chrome and Murakumo in the first Armored Core, similar extent Emerald and Zeo Matrix in Armored Core 2. But this last line of this particular message they sent, I was looking for this to highlight, because when I saw this, even though the wording is not exactly the same, like the way it's like structured and phrased, like this is one of those things that reminds you that this is a reimagining of Armored Core 1, because this is part of the final monologue that the AI gives you at the end of the first game, where like you destroy it, and is basically asking you, do you want to destroy like the order and peace that I have maintained? Because people cannot survive in a world without order, even if that order is nothing but an illusion. That line is similar in the first game, where it goes, people cannot live without order, even if it is a lie.
Right.
So that's the dilemma that is being faced right now, except it's like, unlike in the first game, where like that particular plot detail was really only dumped right at the very end, that you didn't even realize that you were that's what you were being led to until the very end. Here, the game decides to turn that concept on its head by going, no, this is eventually where it's going to need to go. Either we deal with this problem directly, or we are going to perish.
Right. Haven't killed anything in too long, buddy. We gotta kill something.
Yeah, I know. It's just so many things about like this setting, like, and how it like kind of twists on like familiar concepts is so like, God, I could just talk about it forever. But why don't we at least show off like some of the other ACs that I've been holding in the garage for a while. Let's check out the arena. Let's find like a good rank to go with. Let's pick something at random. Light and maneuverable as possible. Yada yada. So there we go. You see, like, who we're going up against.
Just up against it with the tank. Sure, that was a good rock paper scissors matchup.
Yeah, get to choose all kinds of different arenas if we want as well. You know, some of them can be more beneficial than others, especially if you're in your situation where your opponent likes to fly a lot. So you might want to say, go to the parking lot where there's a low ceiling, so that it's like, no, I'm keeping you at eye level at all times. So let's get back into using this particular heavy bad boy. We got a flamethrower on hand. I got a big energy rifle and an energy cannon.
Hello, ladies. I have 2 guns and no waiting.
He's at least staying well behaved and not trying to fly around.
And also heat. This cat does not have any friggin' problems with heat. There you go. He's starting to hop around a little bit. Holy crap! Like definitely just nettling you to death. Too bad you have big gun.
Yeah, this was definitely one of those that like I would switch to whenever it came to just arena fights, especially if they would become a huge pain in the ass. Naturally, that wasn't really a big one, but I might as well show, as a brief example, what a real bastard of a fucking opponent is like. Exile. An important thing to note about this one is, he has the Moonlight Blade on his left arm, like that. The familiar yellow color could be seen anywhere. He's got a machine gun, very rapid fire, but most dangerous of all, that leads to this fight being a battle of attrition, ultimately, is that he has a radar jammer. That's the extension part he has.
Yes, you're manually aiming most of your weapons.
Yeah, but the thing is, why I say it's a war of attrition is that the radar jammer, you have to activate it manually and has limited number of uses, like about 5. So if you learn to at least outlast that for that long, then you have like a fighting chance to kind of whittle him down over time, as long as you're good at dodging his bullets.
Yeah, that like, and as I was about to make a comment about hey, dodging his bullets is a lot more difficult than that might make it sound. Homeboy is a fucking deadeye. Most pilots are in AC3 games.
Yeah. Unfortunately, as you'd expect, I fucked up. I'm in the recharge phase.
Yeah, he's cracking you open like an egg.
Yeah.
It'd
Should be
like
no
that
surprise
sometimes.
as well. You know, because it's like, why is he in E rank? Well, the thing is, with all those E rank ACs that you could fight, those only really show up once you beat the game the first time. He is explicitly a post-game opponent.
Yeah.
But at least there's like, that's at least the thing that I did like a lot about this game once I beat it for the first time and saw what it had to offer was, you know, just there were still more things to dig into, you know, like more arena opponents, an entirely new arena, even like the op intensify part that I had shown I equipped on one of my ACs. The way you get those abilities added to it is that you actually have to either like defeat certain arena opponents or like complete, I think it's like complete certain missions with a particular rank is the idea. So that's the sort of thing where I actually like it. Like, if you're going to give players the option of being able to break the game with like kind of OP abilities, I at least appreciate it as being something where it's like you unlock it and you have to then kind of prove yourself further on to through like meeting special requirements.
I mean, it's the same basic idea of unlocking the infinite rocket launcher or whatever in a Resident Evil game. By the time you spent that much time doing, you know, X or Y ridiculous thing in the game and proving your mastery in that way, you might as well just let the player go have some freaking fun.
Yeah, that's why I like the context for it better than Human Plus, is because Human Plus it's supposed to feel like a penalty because you have to be so bad at the game that you acquire like 50,000 credits worth of debt that the game just restarts. But if someone already knows that, then they're just gonna purposefully lose anyway. Like, if they really want to go that route of like having a slightly easier time.
Yeah, that also requires a specific mindset, though, right? Because like frickin' Metal Gear Solid 5 did something similar. Like, you go and you die a couple of times, you get the chicken hat, and that basically turns off anything resembling any kind of challenge in the game. And most people will tell, like most players that I've seen will just outright say, no, go screw yourself. I'm not putting on the chicken hat because it is a chicken hat.
Yeah, same thing with how like Ninja Gaiden Black had Ninja Dog mode, where it's where like you basically get pitied by the purple-haired bastard child ninja from the Dead or Alive games, and you get a purple armband for it.
Yeah, and it's just like it depends on somebody's, you know, mental state there.
Yeah.
I remember
especially because with the Ninja Dog example I just gave, even when it came to like, even if it is an easier mode, I would argue that it's not so much easier that like, if you think you could get through that, then there's absolutely no reason you couldn't get through normal, you know? Like, it's like it kind of exists with a certain reduced level difficulty to prove that it's like, what you think is hard is not actually hard if it is that doable.
Right.
Yeah, so, and speaking of Op Intensify, you know, and those kind of bonus features, might as well show it off as well. Though I do want to quickly adjust to see about like I think just to maybe speed it up possibly. Well, I don't know exactly, because I think even then, because of this being already 100% complete file, I forget if this gives you the option to go in with an overweight AC, but I'm so used to being within those limits anyway that, like, I don't want to do something too crazy. Unless, let's look at the... Okay, so it's like... So, like, I'm just slightly over, like, the weight limit on legs, but I want to see... Oh, but this... Oh, that's way overweight, though.
That was over twice as heavy as your currently installed part.
Yeah. So it's like pulse cannon, stressing ammo storage. Okay, yeah, we could actually do that. So this is gets us a little bit more energy weapon usage, especially because I can at least demonstrate something that I never did show people I think Eureka 7 was inspired by those long backpack designs. Funny you mention that. These designs were made by Shoji Kawamori, one of the all-time great mecha designers, like, in anime, games, like, all industries that gets him involved with, like, hey, you want to design some cool robot parts for us? That'd be sweet.
Sure, why not? I've made literally my entire career doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, Macross, maybe you heard of it? That sort of thing. Okay, so I want to find... Let's see where that is, because there's at least 2 more missions I'm wanting to show off specifically. One of them's the final mission, which naturally will be right at the end. But there's another I want to show as well, which highlights another tradition of the Armored Core series, where, you know, you'll find plenty of other ACs or just regular MT-type robots, but occasionally you do get to fight against something that is just so much bigger than literally anything you fought before. It's always like the biggest MT imaginable. The first game had it with the Devastator. So, and I believe there's like a similar class type of MT that you can find. There it is.
There it is.
Right here in Avalon Hill.
Our long-range scanners have acquired a massive target moving through Sector 720. Given its current heading, we believe that a nearby energy reactor is in imminent danger. Unleashing something of this magnitude can only be the work of the controller. Whatever its intentions, the situation looks grim. Regardless, we can't just give in. Destroy the target at all costs.
Gladly. And we even got 20,000 credits to work with for a consort, so let's see what they actually offer. As it turns out, there are other ACs. Spartan, Cilia, Apple Boy, all of these names you recognize as well if you go through the arena rankings.
Right.
Yeah,
These are cats that you can beat up in the arena.
Yeah, it just always... yeah, in fact, we even fought against this one. Like, I always liked that little bit of continuity when in like these games where like they had the arena as a side feature, because they recognize with the arena that it's like, you know, it's a sport. It's for fun. No one's actually supposed to die in them. The only time a Raven is supposed to die is when they're out on a mission and they fail. So, yeah, why not have, like, if you can bring in an ally on a mission, they're also someone that you recognize from the arena themselves. So we're just going to bring in old Royal Mist and take on one behemoth of a machine. Estimated success rate, 8%.
8.
Even the Raven rank is like, that's higher than what's in the arena. Like, even what we got is an A rank, and there it is.
Its full potential is unknown. Be careful.
And Lane's just like, yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah, just don't die, please, for the love of God. Kind of looks a bit like we're on a surface map, isn't it? Even though this technically isn't. A lot of missiles.
Yup, that's a lot of missiles.
Yeah, Macross Missile Massacre inbound.
Freaking harden your arteries on that one.
Yeah, and even then, frame rate, for the most part, doing a pretty good job of holding up despite that, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, if this was Armored Core 2, if it was on that version of the engine, you would not, everything would be so sluggish.
You'd be lucky to be having 30 of the 60 frames at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just go straight down his throat and force the frickin' missiles to hit its own chassis. It seems reasonable.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Unfortunately, I am gonna fail this one.
Yeah, you are super fucking dead.
Yeah. You know, like, even with Op Intensify, not always, like, gonna guarantee that you win. Obviously, like, I had not touched that particular mission in a while. I just remembered that this was the one where you fought the giant MT. So I at least wanted to show off what that looked like. You know? But what I can show off, and will hopefully be able to demonstrate the end of, is the final mission, because that's one of the late game ones already. You know, the controller, it's completely lost it. The fact that it's even sending out, like, a massive fucking monstrosity like that to destroy energy reactors throughout Layered. You know, all of these areas, including ones that look like they're outdoors, that they're on the surface, but are technically still underneath the Earth's surface. They're underneath an artificial sky. It's an important 2 words to mention, because, you know, that's what the main theme of Armored Core 3 is called. AI design mecha incoming with too many fingers. Oh man. It's not gonna be anything that is like on the level of like a 9-ball Seraph. That isn't what this game is gonna end on, as far as the ultimate mecha that you have to fight.
Analysis of the data acquired from Mirage is complete. It revealed the location of the controller's core. We're sending you in to destroy it. Have we made the right decision? We don't know. We can't say why the controller malfunctioned in the first place. All we can do now is hope. Good luck to you.
Not only can they not tell like when it first malfunctioned, they probably could not dig up like a reliable record of when people first moved to Layered to begin with, because the passage of time is so long, like as far as like just the, you know, how long, kind of like how it was, I think, as well in the first game, how long it's been since the eponymous like Great Destruction, that people moved underground and became accustomed to this new way of life.
It also hasn't ever been the controller's like one of the controller's priorities. You know, like it deals with the now and it deals with the future. What happened yesterday is only relevant insofar as it affects the now, right? So like hey, when did people move in? Controller does not care. Right?
Yeah,
like does not get, it could not care less.
Yeah, there's even like an interesting detail about it, like what I was talking about, that passage of time, where so I have a Japanese guide, art book, whatever you would call it, compendium from Japan, called like the Armored Core 10 Complete Works. It was basically like a big book that FromSoft put out that was like after the after they had released Last Raven, you know, kind of compiling and describing like the major details of like the world, the part designs and whatever from those 10 games, because of how, you know, very iterative and same in their gameplay they were.
Right.
And there's a timeline that they provide for both the original first 5 games, you know, because they make one cohesive timeline, and then the other timeline for AC3 to Last Raven. And part of the timeline, they have like a year designation, but it doesn't start immediately for AC3 because it describes, I use my phone's like Google Translate, since it's good enough now that I can just point my phone at it and take a picture and it translates, describing that, you know, Layered and the controller were completed. And then when humanity first moved in and the service was all fucked up, they opted to not use the traditional 365-day calendar because there was like no guarantee or thought at the time that the surface would recover enough that people could, you know, it would not make sense for them to recreate that sense of time and seasons that they had on the surface, because they were now
in
a completely different environment. But then they eventually did go back to it for reasons that like that people were not aware of as to like why that was the case. It's just that's suddenly what it is now. We're back to 365-day years.
I guess it doesn't matter anymore. Go. Let's find out what kind of future will be born from your decision.
Our decision indeed, which is ultimately a decision that, you know, we don't even get. It's not like with other games, and especially not like how it is in Souls games, where pretty much every one of them, it's basically a hallmark where you have a choice of different endings, and they all follow the same beats of, like, there's an ending where you essentially preserve the status quo in one way or another, and then there's the other where you decide to break it, either for the good of people or for your own, like, desire for power.
Do you mind friggin' drone just sort of pissing on you from above?
Yeah, whatever, it's fine. We got something more important coming up, and we at least have like enough AP, I feel like, to be able to pull it off.
Yeah, skipping all of the small fry was probably a good call.
Yeah. So this level, this final mission has had parallels to the final mission of Armored Core as well. Like it's split into two parts, almost in a reverse order. Actually, the first half of the mission actually involves us having to go up a very long shaft, which the thing with the first Armored Core game's final mission is that its hardest part was the navigation of having to go up and down like very vertical chambers that were like really hard to work with that game's camera. But another parallel that this mission has with that is that mission had you fight not one but two AI versions of the most powerful Raven at the powerful AC at the time, called 9-Ball. We are now in a fight where we have to deal with two ACs that are not entirely identical. They have slightly different loadouts, but it's the sort of thing where they are the last line of defense against the controller, against the AI that we need to disable for good. And I love this particular music track that kind of sells the that this is the final stretch.
But the floor made me frickin' triple take as well, because there are the large brown sections that they look like they're not even there. Like it looks like you're gonna fall down it. So
yeah.
Like my heart skipped a beat. Last couple of times you skated over one, and I was just like, oh shit, they're gonna get the drop on him now.
Yeah. I imagine it's made just slightly harder by the fact that, this is a PS2 game that outputs at 480i, so there's like the extra loss of detail that naturally comes from having to run a deinterlacer, which is for the better. I don't think anyone at home would necessarily want to see like an image that is just jittering up and down by one pixel lines.
Like interlacing was a requirement of its time.
Yes.
It is absolutely not something that anybody wants to deal with in 2023.
Yeah. It made sense when we all had CRTs, which all had their own other benefits, naturally. But, we've gone to
kill a man.
Yeah, basically, just shooting electron guns into the back of like a glass pane, and that's how you get images.
Also, just the frickin' annoying. Like I've done a lot of like moving around in my time, and I will tell you, moving is pretty much the single most obnoxious and annoying thing. Like, it's my single least favorite thing to do in the world.
Yeah.
I very abruptly hated it a lot less in starting in like it was like 2010 or 2011 when proper flat screens started to become become the standard. And all of a sudden, all of like a TV was just 1,000 times easier to move.
Yeah.
Like, instead of needing a hand truck and two men, because of both how both heavy and bulky it was. Like one man could just grab the edges and be like, oh.
Yeah. And admittedly, it did have like the unfortunate downsides of you lost out on some of the other like image benefits and latency that loss of latency from like going from CRTs, but at least with how much more TVs have advanced since the early days of LCD, it's largely getting better at that. And of course we have like these upscalers to kind of pick up the slack on making sure that 480i, interlaced images are at least viewable.
I remember buying a couple of monitors around that same time and actually having to care about what their gray to gray time was.
Yeah.
Definitely. You remember that crap? You look at it and just be like, you have to look at something for gray to gray, and it needed to be like ideally it would be 2 milliseconds. Worst case, it could be 4. And if it was anything higher than that, if it was 6 or 8, you start doing like a faster game like this one, pulled that one out at the last second. Holy mother!
Yeah.
If you started doing a faster game like this one, you'd have all sorts of tearing and ghosting.
Yeah, like the being able to accurately kind of like show objects in motions without them just naturally blurring because of the display. Yeah, it's like it like for 2D games in particular, like no shit, that would also like wreak havoc on like the readability in spots.
But the pillar. There's a heat source in the center. Could it be?
Thank you, Lane.
Yeah.
What do you?
Reactor. Destroy it. You should neutralize
All right,
the controller.
it's open. I also like this chamber because it appeals to me as a fan of Armored Trooper Votoms because this is because the finale of that show is in a very similar environment. Also, is the destruction of an AI.
Attempting reconstruction.
Yeah, I told you I'd be able to pull through. I mean, like, this is actually the one mission I did practice beforehand to make sure it's like, I want to be able to show this off because this ending is important.
What was that? Something about the surface?
So remember what you were telling us early on about that Philip K. Dick story?
Yep, about the Defenders.
Yeah, I actually had to hold myself back when I was hearing you give the synopsis because I did not want to give this away yet. Yeah, like as you said, like everything about like what the controller's plans were doing, its malfunctions even to that degree. It wasn't really a malfunction. However cruel it was in the moment, it at least understood that, the nature of humanity, that, when they face such catastrophe, that they have to kind of pull through in a way that they ensure their continued survivability, from like the great destruction on the surface meant people had to move to a different environment to survive. Now that their original environment has healed, they need a similar crisis to kind of get them to not die as a result, and that led to them finally reclaiming the surface.
Yep, the entire larger point of the Defenders was simply so hey, you go through all of this. It needs to be fresh in your memory when you go back to Paradise. So you understand. You understand what's going on and your priorities are right. Yep.
Produced by Kenichiro Tsukura. Which, speaking of, I might as well bring this up, even though like it's just a simple like teaser trailer announcement, but I knew it was going to be coming eventually. Hey, that Daemon X Machina sequel finally has an official title.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. Aside from the fact that I've made note that, like, I just don't give much of a shit about, like, when companies, like, do an announcement with a teaser trailer, I at least know that Daemon X Machina was 3 years ago at this point. It's a recent thing, and I love that game. I got more hope in, like, what they got planned for that game to be really good, more than I do for Armored Core 6, wherever that lands.
Yeah, like we're all still praying that from remembers like the good parts of of Armored Core, but there has been a lot of crap in this series, and it's hard to argue otherwise.
Yeah, especially when it's like I still cannot shake the feeling that the success they've had with Souls and Souls-like games and iterating on that style of game, I cannot help but feel it has like resulted in like design atrophy in other areas, because they used to make so many more types of games back during this generation. Like Armored Core was obviously their big one. That was the big niche success that they had for the longest time. But they were still doing Kingsfield. They were still doing other weird stuff on the PS2 like Evergrace. They were also branching out into the Xbox with Otogi. But yeah, that's oh man, yeah, this game, like I really cannot state enough how much I love what this does as far as being like a clever reimagining of what Armored Core 1 was about, you know, while also, like as I said at the start, making up for the sins of the second generation of AC, making a lot of its ideas finally gel with what was a strong foundation that they had made on the PS1.
Absolutely. With like the note of technical horsepower, like that is definitely one of the primary things that everybody's interested in seeing, is because of like this genre, this style of mecha game hasn't really been done for quite a long time, actually. I think like
Yeah.
I genuinely can't remember if there's any like third person kind of action style mecha games in more or less the last major generation of consoles, which obviously has mirrored a similar arc of capability for PCs as well.
Yeah.
So like, how precisely are you going to leverage all of that is an open question, because like, yes, obviously graphics help and graphics matter, but you know, mecha fans tend to be pretty functionality oriented and pretty crunch driven sorts, and it's a real question as to how much they are going to they're going to care about super flashy AAA graphics versus all of the little things that make a mecha feel like a big stompy robot.
Yeah, like yeah, especially from like how I've approached it, it's always been a mix of like the functional priority combined with, you know, by extension with how this is a genre that has existed even years before video games started to take cracks at it, you know? It's something you've seen in anime and manga, and there's like a sort of idea, a vision of what it would be like to pilot a giant robot at that, where you want to get that same feeling and convey it in whatever way you can, and in most cases, you know, games have approached that from like making sure the mechanics are rock solid, which is no surprise that it also means they feel a lot like the real robot animes of the 80s, because they were all, even in those shows, they were very driven by their rules and their systems, because they had to sell the idea that they were functional, realistic machines.
Yep.
And I think to send this off just one last time, win or lose, let's do one more AC versus AC fight for old time's sake.
Dang straight. I like it.
Yep. Got my default Arc 6. We're going up against a heavy-duty tank with all the DACA, or, well, not so much DACA, it's like a flamethrower and bazookas, and I think those are like dual slug cannons. So we'll see how that goes. All right.
Excuse me.
Yeah. I just feel overall very good about this. Like, it's the sort of thing where, yeah, like, if this old stream feature was something different and it was more in line with being like an actual, you know, set of pre-recorded videos, like, this probably would have been one of the ones where I would be like, you know, I do feel like doing an entire original playthrough again. That I'm trying to keep my words together while also
while also trying to not get blasted with a shotgun from above.
Yeah.
Homeboy's got a flat cannon over there. He played UT. He knows what's up.
Yeah. Damn straight.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, he's got the overboost. He knows what he's doing. I do like the small bits of destructible objects in the environment, because we are blowing things up in a ruin. But yeah, it's just the idea where it's like, being able to kind of show off more of the context of the game as it goes on, because I had to basically demonstrate like just the key highlights, how it starts, like a mission from the middle, how the arena fights can go, and then of course like the missions from the end that finally kind of wrap together what the core plot is about, while also doing a lot of explaining, which meant spending time in the menus. Not as exciting naturally, but you know how it is.
Oh goodness, you are really riding empty.
Yeah. Oh my god. Okay.
Homeboy's got no problems with his generator.
Yeah. He's got no problem trying to cook me either.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lose. I'm not gonna be able to win this, but I might as well go out trying.
You can't take much more of this, but neither can he. You've been doing a good job. Oh man, that's a pity. Well. I am convinced you were only a couple of tags from putting him down too.
Yeah, that this really does highlight as well just the thing that makes you understand that FromSoft in general got better at like balancing the different parts and making sure that that you would be challenged to try and use different builds as necessary. Because I was using the Karasawa. That is traditionally the iconic, powerful fuck-off beam rifle of the series. And it's like, if you got that, along with the Moonlight Laser Blade in 1st gen and 2nd gen, you were basically good to go. Nothing else could top you. And it's like, nah, even in this game, even if you have that on hand, you're still being faced with like much more challenging AI and a lot more different like strategies that you have to contend with.
Yep.
Yeah, just what a fantastic game. This is one where it's brilliant. Like I do rate it as like top 5 of the series overall. It's up there with Silent Line, Master of Arena, Last Raven, and probably surprising to some, considering that it's like part of a generation that's seen as a black sheep, but Verdict today. The last AC, the game they made before they went on their 10-year hiatus. Because as very different as it is mechanically compared to the other games, it is still very well-rounded and fleshed out as an overall package, and has, I feel, still the right amount of respect towards the series legacy, despite playing nothing like this game does, or the PS1 games, you know? Like, being in that top 5 for a niche series that managed to get, like, 14 mainline games, all things considered. I'm not counting spin-offs like Formula Front or even the PSP ports.
But like, you don't need to. Like, friggin' 14 games is an absolutely stellar, like, record of success.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been, like, to have it be that strong throughout the 1st gen and 3rd gen, which, like, that's 5 games in total for 3rd gen, by the way. I mean, depending on who you ask, they might try and split it up to be like, well, those last 3 are, like, 3.5 because they did some more system changes that had huge ramifications on how everything else played. I still kind of count it as the same even with those changes, because it's still all part of the... It's not that big of a jump compared to how it is going from, like, 1st gen to 2nd. And I think, like, they do a much better job of, like, creating, like, a stronger narrative that ties them all together. Because I think that having gone, like, after they developed those PS1 games and Armored Core 2 and Another Age, I think after that point, they absolutely realized, yeah, in terms of, like, fleshing out this world better and, like, playing on story expectations that we have set with the first few games, we can absolutely start to mess around with them and create something that is a lot more impactful, even if we are still approaching it in a very minimalist, detached view. That's what I think makes it powerful to me.
Yep, I'd concur with that.
Yep. So thanks again for being on board for this one.
Absolutely.
And I'm also looking forward as well to when we get to the remaining PS2 Armored Core games, and you also get to experience and re-experience like where this goes through. I know you're familiar with Silent Line. Yeah.
I need to remember to properly get charcuterie for that. These sorts of games always go down better with some good snacks, I think.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, we're still keeping it in with the good old 2-hour mark, 2-hour limit. We know just how long to get the most out of each of these games. So we'll see you for that next time. I know that Silent Line's going to be right on July 1st, actually. Yeah, so yeah, we got plenty of time for me to get prepared for that one. And thanks everyone that stopped by. Time for air conditioning 4. No. Well, I mean, whatever. Where I'm at, it is technically approaching summer, but it's not gotten so hot yet that I need an air conditioner. So I think I'm good. My energy bill is grateful for that.
I'm still getting lots of good runs with my dogs yet. So which is notable because one of the biggest things about living in Kansas City during the summer. It is always humid. Like it is like the humidity here is absolutely god awful. The weather here sucks, and that is one of the worst parts about it. But weather's holding pretty well this year. Hell of a lot better than last year, at any rate.
Yeah, not so much humidity in Alaskan summers from my experience. Just when it gets hot, you can feel how dry it gets.
Yeah.
But,
all right. Yeah. Well, I do need to skate. I need to use the restroom really bad. So I am gonna bolt. Appreciate you very much for having me along, Ark, and I'll talk to you very soon.
Yep. You have a good rest of your Saturday, and everyone else out there, take care.
All right.
Game over.